Some people I've seen, like, it's very possible that some people will smile this way and then wink this eye, and like that's not very natural. You know, I can go like this, but going like this, hang on, how do I do this? I can't do it. I can't do it. Hey, want to be reviewed? Just send your animations in the Professor Goo review channel in the Discord. Each stream, I'll be going over one animation, which will be randomly selected from that channel. If you happen to be in stream that day, we'll go over it and maybe even jump into a call. If you want to watch these streams live, go to twitch.tv/DylanGoo. Hey, Goos, and welcome to the Professor Goo review. We have a submission today by Row 1, which is super cute. It's actually a collie getting her phone stolen.
Let's go.
Temporarily, of course, temporarily. Yeah, she got it back. So this is a super cute animation. 3 things I want to talk about specifically today are pushing the poses, specifically the hand and face poses here. Then we also have footwork. Footwork is an interesting question because it's very easy to forget about footwork. This is actually something that I think a lot of animators struggle with. So we can talk about footwork a little bit. There's a lot of options for footwork, and I think right here in particular, when we can see her feet, it would be really nice if we could see her feet actually, you know, moving just a bit more. And then the final third note would be how to get this particular shot to feel more threatening. She does feel threatening with the effects, but let's see if we can make her feel threatening with the pose, right? We don't want to rely too much on effects. We don't want to rely too much on peripherals or you know, even other departments and stuff like that. As an animator, you want to see if you can push everything you can within your realm of expertise. So first things first, posing. So I think generally speaking, poses are the, you know, the default thing that we all talk about because it's always something we can push. And it's something that you should always, you know, be wary of as you're working on animations because they are the fundamental building blocks of animation. The pose in particular that I want to review is this one, of course, because this is quite literally a pose, right? So this is a pose that she's striking. And so we want to talk about how can we improve, you know, the hand poses here, and of course the face pose as well. And I would say probably the biggest thing we can do, I noticed that we have this jaw turn here. So this jaw actually moves, if you notice. That this jaw is actually rotating over here. I would challenge you not to rotate the jaw too much. We don't actually move our jaws that much. Our actual jaws, we don't move them that much. But we do actually get this this mouth tilt or translation quite a bit. So this is really cute. This is really good. Let's try, if we can, to get a version of this where we just have the mouth tilt, but keep the jaw centered, right? Keep the jaw centered. I do think it's a good idea to get this mouth tilt. And if we get this mouth tilt, check out my my mouth, right? See how I'm moving my mouth without moving my jaw? It's just my lips that are moving, right? So what we want to do, I love this upper lip. That's a great position, right? So what we want to do is see if we can just get like this. Yeah. Let's see if we can get this to feel just a bit more like this, right? Just a bit more like that, where it's like it's clearly still tilted. You get the idea. So just basically having a clear sort of like, you have this tilt, but you see the jaw is still lined up with the nose. Yeah. So I think that could be cute. I think obviously with that, you'll have just a bit more, perhaps a bit more cheek here, stuff like that. And I think, you know, if you wanted to, when you do this kind of thing, this is something that we don't really do for anime, to be completely honest with you. But like in a more realistic rig, like this is an option that you could totally do that like does help sell it just a little bit. Another thing that I think is interesting is this eye pose. So right here you have a closed eye, which is good, but I actually would say it should look like that. And this is something that you learn in anime quite a bit as well. Like you learn the difference between like this versus this, right? So like these are 2 faces that look and feel very different because of the arcs of the eyelids. And if it's arcing downwards, this is sleepy. You know what I mean? This guy's clearly sleeping, whereas this guy is like happy, right? This guy's moe as F. Like, I mean, just look at this guy, radiating energy, radiating happiness, right? So those are the differences there. And the reason why that is because in real life, when we close our eyes, especially when we wink like this, typically speaking, we're going to have just a little bit of upwards motion on the lower eyelid, right? So the lower eyelid actually pushes up just a bit. And it may not look exactly like, you know, like this in real life, but it does help read for like more stylized characters like this, to have something like that show that the lower eyelid is actually being flexed. Now, when you sleep and stuff, your lower eyelid, and when you blink, your lower eyelid is completely relaxed. So that's why like this ends up working more for blinks and for sleeping and stuff like that. So when you're striking a pose, I think this generally tends to look a little better, especially when you smile. So another reason why this works so well is like if this was, for example, something like that, or something like this even, you'll notice that like the smile is actually pushing up the lower eyelids, like physically. Like when you smile in real life, you guys, people talk about eye smiles all the time. It's literally like the lower eyelid is being squinted just a little bit to show that, you know, you're smiling, and because like the cheeks, this has to go somewhere, you know, all this mass. It's good that you have these two things at the same time. Some people I've seen, like it's very possible that some people will smile this way and then wink this eye, and like that's not very natural. You know, I can go like this, but going like this, hang on, how do I do this? I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't wink with the other eye and smile with the other one, you know, like the other side. It doesn't quite work, right? So that's something that, you know, is good that you've achieved that, which is great. So that's one thing I would say for this pose. And you can kind of see now, I think from far away, it does feel just that much more natural, just slightly more natural, which is great. For this hand pose, let's talk about how to make this just a little bit more sort of like natural, more cute, right? I think one thing is the thumb can be backwards a little bit. We should flex the thumb, right? We talk about flexing the fingers. Flexing the fingers is actually something that will change the shape of the fingers. So it's not just straight, it's actually slightly backwards. And then we also have, of course, this hand, which I would argue we could do just a little bit of that as well. And this is a common thing to do in stylized animation, just having just a slight bit of that bend back to emphasize the pose. See, that looks already just a little bit cuter, right? So then we talk about these other three fingers. What do we do with these other three fingers? Interesting question. I would actually recommend that these fingers stay together. You would just get a slightly more natural pose, because it would actually take a little bit of energy to relax your fingers in that way. It actually takes a little bit of energy to separate them. Like if you have a fist, like make a fist right now and try to separate your fingers while keeping your fist intact. Doesn't really quite work. It hurts. It's painful. So that's something that I think would be worth doing as well, just keeping those fingers together. So now we have this pose that just feels a little bit more appealing. We have a cute little wink here. I think if you wanted to, you could play around with the eyebrows a bit more as well. So like when you wink like this, usually notice how like, see the eyebrow? The eyebrow goes down a little bit. So that's something that you could also play around with just a bit. So I think like something like, doesn't have to be super strong, but just a little bit of eyebrow movement would be good. It's footwork time, footwork time. So for this, I'm actually gonna cheat a little bit. You didn't think I could do that, did you? Ha ha! So let's talk about these poses right side up. So it's pretty simple. Like footwork is a really big topic. Generally speaking, there's a lot of options. If you're not comfortable with footwork, you're gonna limit yourself a lot as an animator. So the biggest thing about footwork is to be comfortable with moving the feet and understanding how that affects the body, and vice versa as well, right? So here we have an acting beat where basically Akali here she's getting her phone yanked out of her hand. There's a couple things that happen, right? When she gets her phone yanked out of her hand, the first thing that happens is there's physics. There is a force coming this way that is pulling her phone. She, no doubt, in theory, in real life, she should have a bit of a grip on her phone that is contested, right? So the first things first is I would actually have her keep her grip on the phone here and have her pulled forward, actually. I think that would actually be just a bit more convincing, right? And so what we have actually is an imbalance, a momentum, or basically a mass imbalance, right? Because she's being pulled forward like that. It would take her probably a little bit of time to rebalance herself. So what we actually want specifically is, I think she'll let go of the hand, let go of her hand maybe here, her phone, I should say. The biggest thing with this, right, is of course that you have the need to take a step. And we already have that, by the way. You do have a step being taken, which is good. But let's talk about exactly how much of a step we need to take. Because right here, the amount of force that I'm inputting into this pose is a lot greater than what you have. So I feel like if we were more comfortable with taking more steps here, we'd be more comfortable with imbalancing her even more, right? So as she's leaning forward here, you'll notice that she's going to have to probably take at least 2 steps, in my opinion, with how much she's leaning here. Like a side view for this would be something like this. Like she'd be like this, right? I imagine this would be her current pose from the side. So if she were like that, you can see that her center of mass is very much that way. So you see how that, like those 2 steps feels a lot more natural, pretty well balanced. So how would that look in 3D? That's gonna be a little bit more complicated to show, but I do think if we were to have this pose here, we'd probably have something like, you know, a more leaning forward pose probably, for sure. And then this one will be a lot further back, right? And then she needs to fully commit the next foot, right? Anyway, so the footwork will help out a lot. And then we have this. So the last thing here, of course, is this threatening pose. There's a couple things we can do with this, because I think ultimately this works pretty well for her character. Like she's about to start a music video, which for Akali works pretty well, right? But I do wonder, how do we get this just to feel a bit more serious, a bit more threatening? There's a couple of big picture things that we could do, right? If we want to keep this pose, then we should probably change the face pose, I think. So like this is good, but what if it was really just being pushed as a more angry pose, and maybe even a smaller pupil, right? Possibly. So you'd have something a lot more angry, a lot more serious. I also think you'll notice that I've lifted up the lower eyelid a little bit again. That's another one of those squint things, right? So squinting is a really, 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 really useful tool for facial animation. Use it. So like squinting typically is involved with a couple feelings. We have like happy, and then we have angry, we have sad. They all use squinting. So if you want to use any of these, you gotta master squinting in some way. You gotta understand what the differences are. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This is honestly a great pose. I think this is really, really good. But yeah, that is pretty much it, row 1. Everything else is looking pretty good. Overall, of course, I really like this animation. Super cute. Again, huge fan of Akali. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of potential to just improve the footwork and improve the poses. But overall, solid foundation.